They said we were too young, too fragile, too reckless to be trusted with the kind of knowledge that carved empires out of galaxies. The elder races spoke of themselves as if they were eternal, civilizations so ancient their histories stretched back before Earth's first spark of life. They gathered in their great council, a circle of species who claimed dominion over the stars. But humanity? Humanity was never given a seat. We weren't even given a voice. They called us children. They called us dangerous. And so they locked their doors. But they made one mistake. They forgot that humanity has always found a way into places we were never invited. Before I continue, let me ask you something, because this story is about you. Tell me from which city you're watching this video. Drop it in the comments. I want to see the world light up with your names. And if you're new here, make sure to like this video and subscribe, because the stories ahead, they only get darker, bigger, and more human. The galaxy thought it had us figured out. They saw our wars, our hunger, our inventions, and they feared us. But fear is different from respect. They believed they could simply deny us, that by withholding their counsel, their secrets, their higher truths, humanity would remain on the outside. But then, in the unlit void beyond mapped space, aboard an exploration vessel named Odyssey, we found something we were never meant to touch. It wasn't a planet. It wasn't a fleet. It was a machine older than stars. It drifted in silence, half buried in a nebula's dust, forgotten by the galaxy that had once worshipped it. Its design was impossible, geometry that bent the mind, metal that still pulsed with power though no sun had touched it in a billion years. And in that moment, when humanity brushed against the ancients' greatest secret, the course of the galaxy shifted. Because unlike the elder races, we did not look upon that weapon with reverence. We looked upon it with hunger. And hunger has always been our greatest weapon. The Odyssey's crew should have turned back. That was what the elder races would later whisper, their voices dripping with contempt. But they didn't know us. They didn't understand that turning back has never been in humanity's nature. The object floated before them, half shrouded in the nebula's haze, larger than a continent. Its surface shifted when you stared at it, as though the angles rearranged themselves when unobserved. Sensors returned nothing but static. Every attempt to scan it collapsed into noise. Captain Elena Mora, standing at the viewport, felt the weight of its silence pressing on her chest. She had seen black holes devour suns. She had seen alien megastructures around gas giants. But nothing compared to this. It wasn't just old, it was ancient, older than stars themselves. When her science officer whispered, "It feels like it's waiting for us," no one laughed. Meanwhile, in the distant chambers of the Galactic Council, a dozen elder species listened in horror. For they knew that shape. They knew those impossible lines. They had buried its memory deep within forbidden archives and vowed never to speak its name again. The God Machine, the weapon of ascension, the thing that should have slept. And now, humans had found it. Inside the nebula, the Odyssey launched drones. They drifted closer, mapping what they could. Most were torn apart instantly, ripped into clouds of dust, their atoms scattered like chaff. But one survived long enough to pierce the surface. It didn't impact, it didn't land, it simply vanished, absorbed, swallowed by geometry that should not exist. And then the object reacted. The nebula churned. The air aboard the Odyssey grew thin, though the ship's systems showed no breach. Every crew member felt a pressure at the base of their skulls, like invisible fingers prying into their thoughts. And then, words. Not through sound, but directly into their minds. "You are not of the Council. You are not invited. Why have you come?" The crew froze. Some cried out. Others clutched their heads, blood dripping from their noses. But Captain Mora stepped forward, jaw tight, heart pounding. She did not reply with fear. She replied with the truth that had carried humanity across oceans, across continents, and now across stars. Because no one ever invited us, and we came anyway. For a heartbeat, silence. Then, impossibly, the object pulsed, not with anger, not with rejection, but with recognition. Far away, in the council chambers, panic erupted. The elder races screamed at each other in languages older than humanity itself. Some demanded intervention, others begged for isolation. A few whispered the truth that none dared admit aloud. Humanity had awakened what they had spent eons trying to bury, and worse, it seemed to recognize us. The Odyssey trembled as lights rippled across the impossible surface of the artifact. They weren't lights in the traditional sense, they were impressions, carved directly into the mind. Every crew member saw them differently. Some saw flames, others saw rivers of stars. One swore he saw his long-dead mother reaching out to him, but they all felt the same truth. The weapon had recognized humanity, not as prey, not as trespassers, but as heirs. Captain Elena Mora gripped the railing. "Status report," she barked, her voice steadier than she felt. The crew scrambled. "Engines responding erratically. Shields cycling without command input. External comms jammed." And then, the helmsman whispered, pale-faced, "It's flying us." The ship no longer obeyed their controls. The artifact had seized them, dragging the Odyssey forward like a toy pulled into a current. Its titanic hull seemed to open before them, a yawning abyss of impossible angles. The Odyssey was swallowed whole. On Earth, humanity's communications erupted with chaos. A dozen deep space relays caught fragments of the Odyssey's distress signals before the connection was cut. The Council of Elders had already censored the news, warning their own populations that humanity had trespassed into restricted zones. But the humans didn't buy the lies. Every transmission fragment was dissected, studied, shared, multiplied across human networks. The words, "We are not invited, we came anyway," spread like wildfire. And somewhere deep in Washington, Geneva, and Beijing, the message was clear. If the aliens feared what we had found, then it might be the only thing that could finally put humanity on equal footing with them. Meanwhile, in the Galactic Council chambers, terror festered. "The God Machine has protocols," hissed the serpentine delegate of the Tsakar Dominion. "It should destroy intruders outright." "And yet it hasn't," croaked the crystalline envoy of the Veyron. "It is testing them. Don't you see? It has found resonance in their blood." "They are young," another species argued. "They have no claim. They should not even exist at this table." But the truth spread across the chamber like a rot. They had excluded humanity, dismissed them as dangerous children, too volatile for the ancient order. And now the one weapon that could bend gods was choosing those same children. Inside the artifact, the Odyssey's crew floated in awe. What they entered was no hollow ruin. It was a cathedral of machinery, its walls flowing like liquid metal, runes carved into surfaces that stretched beyond sight. Every step Captain Mora took echoed. Every breath she drew felt stolen from eternity itself. And then came the voice again, rumbling in the marrow of their bones. The council swore oaths. They denied me. They buried me. They feared my truth. But you... The light flared. The crew fell to their knees, not in submission, but under the sheer gravity of its presence. You carry the spark. You carry the hunger. You will take your seat among gods. And for the first time, Elena Mora understood. This wasn't just a weapon. It was a throne. It was an invitation the others had tried to erase, and humanity had just been handed the crown. The chamber inside the artifact pulsed, as if the walls themselves were alive. The Odyssey's crew stood surrounded by impossible geometry, dwarfed by machines that had been silent since before Earth's sun was born. Yet now, every circuit hummed like a chorus. Captain Elena Mora raised her eyes toward the golden lattice glowing above them. It bent and curved in patterns no human architect could design, as though light itself had been woven into strands and pulled taut. Her skin prickled, not with fear, but with the weight of being noticed. The lattice shifted, folding into a shape vaguely recognizable as a throne. The crew gasped. It wasn't metal, not stone. It was pure, living radiance, and at its base, etched into the crystalline floor, were words in thousands of languages, all translating into one sentence. The seat awaits the worthy. No elder race had ever mentioned such a throne. No archive in the Galactic Union hinted at it. The Council of Ancients claimed they had inherited dominion over the galaxy because the firstborn builders vanished. Yet here was the truth. The builders had left a seat empty, waiting. The air trembled. The throne sent out a pulse, a wave that spread across the galaxy faster than light, bypassing space itself. Entire fleets, listening posts, hidden observatories, they all received the same undeniable message. A contender has arrived. Far away, in the heart of the Galactic Council, ancient species recoiled. The J-Corps, scaled conquerors older than empires, hissed in alarm. The Sharun, crystalline beings who spoke in resonant tones, fell silent. Even the aloof Valori, who claimed to be the firstborn, tightened their wings. None of them had activated the throne. None had been chosen. And now, humans had. Inside the chamber, Lieutenant Cade whispered, voice shaking. "Captain, this feels like a trap." Elena didn't answer. She knew what it was. Not a trap, an invitation. And she also knew the galaxy would see it differently. The Odyssey's science officer muttered, "They'll never forgive this. We weren't even supposed to know about this throne, let alone stand before it." Elena's jaw set. Then it's already too late. The galaxy made sure we were never invited. Maybe it's time we stopped asking. The throne pulsed again, brighter this time, and something deep inside Elena's chest shifted. Not pain, not fear, but recognition. The seat wasn't just empty. It was searching. It wasn't waiting for a race or a council or even an empire. It was waiting for someone stubborn enough to sit where no one else dared. The galaxy, for the first time in millennia, shuddered, and humanity, unwanted and uninvited, had just been handed the most dangerous throne in existence. The pulse from the throne raced outward, threading across the galactic plane like lightning through dark clouds. Planets shivered as their skies lit with alien auroras. Ancient vaults unlocked themselves without command. Even dormant fleets, sealed for epochs, stirred as if their masters had returned. Every race heard the call, every ruler felt the tremor, and all of them asked the same question: why humans? In the Chamber of Concord, where the Galactic Council of Elder Races had ruled for 50,000 years, pandemonium erupted. The crystalline Sharun fractured their own walls with waves of resonance, their voices vibrating with outrage. "The primitives have awakened the seat. This is an obscenity." The J-Corps pounded clawed fists against the marble dais, scales glinting like armor. "They are not of the ancient blood. They are not heirs. Purge them before the throne binds." The Valori, elegant and winged, folded their feathered limbs tight, but their eyes burned. "You all misunderstand. This is not their achievement. It is the builders testing us, and we have failed if such vermin are recognized." The chamber shook with voices, trillions of watchers across the galaxy tuning in, seeing their rulers panicked, fearful, even desperate. At last, High Chancellor Vela, the Council's eldest and most revered, spoke in a voice so calm it cut the chaos. "Silence. This is a game of optics. The humans cannot be allowed to appear chosen. Their race is young, scattered, vulnerable. We need only strip the illusion of legitimacy." But beneath her calm words, her wings trembled. She knew what the others feared. The throne was no mere relic. It was a symbol of succession. Whoever sat upon it would not merely claim power, they would inherit authority older than empires. Already across frontier colonies, younger species whispered. Some even cheered. The humans had done what no council race dared, touched the forbidden. In the outer rims, rebellion brewed, embers catching. The council could not let this spark ignite. Chancellor Vela's eyes narrowed as she issued her decree. Mobilize fleets. Seal Earth's gates. Humanity must be quarantined before the illusion of their destiny spreads beyond our control. The order echoed into silence, then roared into action. Across the stars, armadas shifted course. Engines burned. Ancient war banners unfurled. For the first time in millennia, the Council prepared for a war of containment. But on the Odyssey, still within the artifact's chamber, Captain Elena Mora felt the throne's pulse one final time, and she realized with a chill that the Council was already too late. The throne hadn't broadcast a question, it had broadcast a proclamation. A new contender has risen. The Council fleets moved with terrifying precision, their shadows blotting out stars as they converged on Sul. For most species, the sight of those banners would have meant immediate surrender. Entire civilizations had yielded before even a single shot was fired. But Earth was not most species. From the deserts of Nevada to the steel shipyards orbiting Titan, the news spread like wildfire. The Council was coming to cage humanity. And instead of fear, there was anger. Instead of despair, there was resolve. The United Terran Defense Network convened in an emergency session. Admirals, generals, civilian leaders, and ordinary engineers crowded hollow walls. They all knew the same truth. Humanity could not match the Council fleet in raw numbers, but numbers had never saved humanity before. It had always been fire, will, and improvisation. "Let them come!" Admiral Rourke growled, his scarred jaw set like stone. "We'll show them what Earth does to empires." And humanity began to prepare. Forges lit up across the colonies. Old warships were stripped, refitted, and rearmed. Civilian freighters were transformed into missile barges. Even the scrapyards of Mars rang with hammers as retired miners welded armor plating onto rusting hulls. Every orbital station became a fortress. Every moon became a bunker. But Earth's greatest weapon was not steel. It was imagination. Tacticians studied Council doctrine, saw its rigidity, and grinned. Engineers remembered a long human tradition, making weapons from whatever they had on hand. Civilians, farmers, even school teachers whispered the same vow: they will not take our freedom. Then came the first clash. The Council's vanguard appeared in the Kuiper Belt, sleek ships shimmering with shields older than human civilization. Their commander, a Valori noble, expected a swift declaration of surrender. Instead, the Council ships were met with silence. Then, the ice fields around them exploded. Hidden among the frozen rocks, humanity had seeded nuclear mines, disguised as drifting debris. The void became a storm of fire, ancient shields straining under detonations the Council had not expected from a primitive species. When the first Council cruiser cracked in half, the galaxy gasped. The Valori commander snarled, ordering the fleet forward. Their beams carved through ice and flame, striking down dozens of human vessels. But humanity did not retreat. They swarmed like hornets, using ships that by Council standards should have been useless, frigates darting between giants, corvettes slamming into weak points, drones ramming engines at suicidal speeds. It was chaos, brutal, improvised. And it worked. The vanguard limped away, scarred. Humanity bled, but humanity endured. On Earth, celebrations broke out in the streets. For the first time in living memory, a younger race had bloodied the Council in open battle. Across the galaxy, whispers grew louder. Other oppressed species, watching the feeds, asked themselves a question their ancestors had long forgotten. If humans can fight the Council, why can't we? But in the Chamber of Concord, The elders sat in silence. Their illusion of control had cracked, and in the artifact's chamber, where the throne pulsed like a living heart, Captain Elena Mora whispered what every human already knew. This was only the beginning. The smoke of the Kuiper Belt skirmish still drifted across void when the galaxy shifted. For eons, every species had lived beneath the shadow of the Council. They had been taught a single lesson: resistance was hopeless. Obedience was survival. Entire histories were written to erase rebellion before it even began. But then Earth had bloodied the gods, and the galaxy could not unsee it. On a mining colony at the rim of Valori space, whispers spread faster than plasma fire. The workers there, insectoid Dravik, chained to labor until their shells cracked, gathered around smuggled holofeeds showing the burning wreckage of Council cruisers drifting through ice. "They bleed," one worker rasped, mandibles clacking. "They can die," another hissed. "They can lose," a third whispered. And that was the most dangerous truth of all. For the first time in living memory, slaves sharpened their mining drills not for ore, but for war. On the oceanic world of Peloran, where the gentle Elari had endured centuries of tribute to the Council, their great choirs sang a different song. No longer prayers for mercy, but war hymns. The deep harmonics carried across their waves, vibrating through the bones of every Elari who heard. A pledge, a defiance, and in hidden channels, rebel envoys began sending coded messages toward Earth. "We will fight. Show us how." In Seoul, humanity's leaders received the first of these transmissions. The War Council, gathered in a hardened bunker beneath Geneva, studied the signals in silence. Admiral Rourke broke it first. "They want us to lead them." General Keon folded his arms. "We can't even hold our own borders, and they expect us to carry theirs?" "They don't want protection," Captain Elena Mora said softly, still marked by the strange glow that lingered from her contact with the throne. "They want permission. They want someone to show them the Council can bleed." Her words hung heavy. For generations, humanity had fought only for itself. Its wars, its revolutions, its survival. Now others looked to them as a spark, and sparks once lit spread fire. When the Council realized the truth, their fear turned to fury. They unleashed propaganda broadcasts across 1,000 worlds. Humans are reckless barbarians. Humans will bring only ruin. Resist them or burn alongside them. But the more they shouted, the more their words rang hollow. The galaxy had seen what the Council could not erase. A warship of gods torn apart by mortals with nothing but will and fire. And then, the unthinkable happened. In the Chamber of Concord, the Vailori delegate, silver-robed, face like carved glass, reported before the elders. "The humans are gathering followers," he hissed. "The Dravik minds stir. The Elari sing rebellion. This contagion must be cleansed before it spreads further." The eldest of the Council, a being who had watched galaxies rise and fall, asked one question. "And if it cannot be cleansed?" The chamber fell silent, because for the first time in their immortal dominion, the Council feared extinction. Meanwhile, in the artifact's chamber, Elena Mora stood once again before the throne. Its golden lattice pulsed brighter now, attuned to her every step. She felt it whisper, not in words, but in waves of meaning, ancient power stirring from slumber. And with each pulse, she realized the truth. The throne had not been waiting for gods. It had been waiting for humans. The Dravik were never meant to speak of rebellion. Their species had been among the first conquered, their homeworld's skies blackened by Council fire before humanity even struck stone against steel. For 1,000 generations, they had been bent beneath the lash, their high voices reduced to labor songs and their claws dulled against stone. But something ancient stirred in their hives now. On the barren colony of Keltar, deep in Council territory, overseers expected the usual rhythm: The endless churning of drills, the steady flow of ore, the silence of obedience. Instead, silence came for another reason. The Dravik had stopped working. At first, the overseers laughed. A few stun bolts, a few executions, and the hives would return to order. But when they raised their weapons, thousands of mandibles clicked in unison, a sound so deep it vibrated the stone walls. The overseers froze. That sound was not defiance. It was unity. Then the first overseer fell, impaled on a mining drill repurposed as a spear. Keltar was lost within hours. Not to human fleets, not to alien invaders, but to the Dravik themselves. The Council's panic was immediate. To lose one of their oldest slave races was unthinkable, worse than a defeat at human hands. The Dravik revolt was proof that humanity's defiance was contagious, and contagions spread fast. Across the galaxy, rebellions flickered like stars in the void. Some were crushed within days, others spread too fast to contain. The Council's fleets were vast, but not infinite, and for the first time in history, they were forced to fight wars on a dozen fronts. When the first Dravik ship limped into Sol, the galaxy truly shifted. It was no warship but a freighter, its hull scarred, its cargo holds filled with refugees. Aboard were thousands of Dravik, their shells cracked, their bodies gaunt from starvation. They should have looked pitiful. Instead, they looked fierce, eyes burning with a fire Earth recognized all too well. When they stepped before the United Terran Assembly, the Dravik chieftain spoke with a voice like stone breaking. "We were slaves. Now because of you, we remember what we are. We come not to beg, we come to fight." The chamber fell silent. Some had expected them to ask for protection, for sanctuary, but instead, they asked for war. Admiral Rourke leaned forward, his gravel voice carrying. "Then let's get you armed." In orbit above Earth, the great shipyards had already begun humming with furious activity. Humanity had no time to build the vast fleets the Council commanded, but they had something better: ingenuity, desperation, and the willingness to share what others feared to touch. And now, with Dravik claws sharpening beside human steel, Earth's war machine grew teeth. The Council elders convened again, their chamber thick with unease. "They ally with vermin now," one spat. "Today vermin, tomorrow half the galaxy," another hissed. "They will not stop until every chain is broken. Do you not see? Humanity infects order itself." The eldest leaned back, shadowed eyes watching the stars projected above the chamber. "Then the solution is clear. Before they rise further, humanity must be unmade." And with that decree, the Council prepared their most ancient weapon, a silence older than empires, hidden for the day a challenger would dare to defy them. Meanwhile, aboard the Odyssey, Elena Mora felt the throne stir again. Its whispers grew stronger, as if it sensed the galaxy trembling. This was no longer about Earth. This was about all of them. And for the first time, she wondered, had humanity discovered the throne, or had the throne discovered humanity? The Council's chamber was sealed in shadow. No torches, no luminescent walls, only the faint flicker of ancient runes carved into stone older than their empires. The elders had gathered not as rulers but as supplicants, their voices hushed, their pride swallowed. On the obsidian floor lay a circle of sigils, each glowing with a faint, sickly light. The eldest among them lowered his gnarled hand and pressed it into the center. The void answered. A tremor rolled through the chamber as if the galaxy itself recoiled. One by one, the elders began the chant. Their words not language but vibration, pulling something from beyond time. When the runes flared to life, it appeared. A sphere of impossible blackness, floating inches above the floor. No light touched it. No reflection escaped it. It was silence made flesh. The elders shuddered. Even they, who had sworn their power eternal, felt small before it. "The veil," whispered one. "The weapon of erasure." It was not a bomb, nor a fleet. It was worse, an annihilation of memory. Wherever the veil was unleashed, civilizations were not merely destroyed, they were forgotten. Planets turned barren, archives emptied, species unremembered. Even their names would slip like water through fingers. It had been used only once before, in a time so ancient even the Council rarely spoke of it. That silence still lingered, a starless wound in the galaxy. Now they meant to turn it against Earth. In orbit around Saturn, the Odyssey crew felt the first ripple. Instruments screamed without input, data streams collapsed into static, and then returned with gaping holes. "Captain," the sensor officer's voice cracked. "It's not interference, it's deletion. Our records are vanishing." Elena Mora gripped the railing. "From what source?" The officer's eyes were wide. "Everything. Maps, signals, even council records we had copied. It's like someone took an eraser to history." Rourke's voice cut in, grim as iron. "Council's moving. And this isn't war as we know it. This is something older, something worse." News spread fast. Colonies went dark, not with flames, but with silence. Worlds once charted slipped from star maps. Traders spoke of arriving at coordinates where bustling stations had been, only to find empty space, as if they had never existed. Entire systems gone, erased not just from reality but from memory. Fear clawed at humanity's unity. If even history itself could vanish, what chance did they have? But the throne whispered still. Elena returned to its chamber within the Odyssey, the golden lattice humming louder than ever. When she touched it, visions flooded her mind, not of destruction, but of persistence. The throne did not fear silence. It remembered what the galaxy forgot. In her mind's eye, she saw civilizations wiped away by the veil ages ago, voices extinguished, faces unrecorded. But here, within the throne's memory, they lived still. Their knowledge, their rage, their unfinished defiance. The throne was not just a weapon. It was a library of the unremembered, and it had chosen humanity to be its mouthpiece. When Elena staggered back, the crew gathered around her. "They mean to erase us," she said, voice trembling but resolute. "But they cannot erase what we carry, not anymore." "What do we carry?" Rourke asked. "The dead," Elena answered. "All of them." The Dravik were the first to kneel. When they learned that the throne remembered their enslaved ancestors, songs and names long obliterated by the Council, they howled as if reborn. For the first time in history, they knew their past had not been truly lost. Then others came, species broken, beaten, and half erased. Word spread like wildfire. Humanity could return what the Council had taken. The galaxies enslaved no longer whispered rebellion. They sang it. The Council elders felt the shift. Their weapon had not brought silence. It had brought a roar. "Impossible," one rasped. "The veil unmakes, always." The eldest shook his head slowly, eyes dim. "Not always. Not if something older remembers." And so the stage was set. The veil, erasing reality itself. The throne, restoring what was lost. And humanity, uninvited, now holding the one power that could not be ignored. For the first time, the gods themselves feared that mortals had stolen their seat. The sky over Earth split without warning. No fire, no ships, no invasion fleets, just silence. It began as a shimmer, like heat rising from pavement, except it blanketed the heavens. Observatories in Chile went blind. Satellites screamed before winking out. Across cities, people lifted their eyes and saw stars vanish in strips, like chalk wiped from a blackboard. The veil had come for humanity's home. At NASA's old command bunker, alarms drowned out voices. Scientists frantically charted what they could, but every second the data corrupted, whole files vanishing mid-sentence. "What's happening?" a technician cried. "It's like Earth's own history is being erased." And it was. Schools opened books to find blank pages, family trees blurred, names missing, pictures smudged out as though time itself recoiled. Monuments crumbled, not with stone breaking, but with the memory of them dissolving. The veil was unmaking humanity's very claim to existence. Above Saturn, the Odyssey crew felt the strike. Elena Mora stood on the bridge, her fists white on the railing as the throne's hum became thunder. "They're erasing Earth," the sensor officer whispered. For a heartbeat, despair crashed through the crew. What good was steel against silence? What good were ships against something that could erase memory itself? But the throne had waited millennia for this moment. The golden lattice flared, filling the chamber with light so fierce the Odyssey's walls seemed to bow. In that instant, every human aboard saw visions. The library of the forgotten opening, voices of entire civilizations screaming their stories back into existence. The throne pushed against the veil. Where the council erased, the throne restored. Names reappeared on pages, statues reformed, family trees filled with ancestors long dead. For the first time in history, humanity remembered things it had never known. Entire bloodlines stretching beyond recorded time. But restoration was not without cost. The visions burned. Soldiers collapsed screaming as centuries of alien wars flooded their minds. Engineers clutched their heads, weeping with knowledge of machines their hands could never build. Children across Earth awoke screaming names their parents had never heard. The throne was feeding humanity every memory it guarded, not carefully, not gently, but as a flood. And with each second, Earth roared louder. Rourke's voice broke the chaos on the Odyssey. "Captain, if we don't control this, it'll tear us apart." Elena's eyes blazed with resolve. "No. This is what they feared. This is what they tried to bury. We're not meant to control it. We're meant to bear it." She strode into the throne's chamber, stepping into the golden light. Her voice thundered, not just from her throat, but from 1,000 others behind her, the chorus of the unforgotten. "We remember," and the veil cracked. On Earth, people rose into the streets, screaming words in languages dead for aeons. Entire cultures erased by the council flared to life in their throats. Ancient hymns thundered in 1,000 voices. The veil tried to smother them. The throne forced memory back into existence. The collision of forces ripped the sky into two. One half silent void, the other blazing with golden fire. Earth was no longer prey. Earth was battlefield. The council elders watched from afar, horror twisting their ancient faces. "They should not be able to resist," one rasped. The eldest's voice broke like old stone. "They are not resisting. They are ascending." And across the galaxy, enslaved species felt it too. Forgotten names and ancestors surged into their minds. Cultures stolen from them were returned in a heartbeat. They wept, not in despair but in fury and hope. The galaxy no longer whispered rebellion. It roared humanity's name. But the throne's gift was poison as much as blessing. For every memory restored, a piece of humanity bent closer to breaking. Minds weren't built to carry the ghosts of millions. The question was no longer if Earth could fight the Council. It was whether humanity could survive its own awakening. The throne had not lied. It had never promised salvation without sacrifice. The Odyssey trembled in Saturn's shadow as the golden lattice swelled, filling every corridor with light. Elena Mora staggered, but did not fall. The throne's voice was inside her now, vast and calm, yet edged with a truth sharp enough to cut flesh from bone. To remember is to bleed. To wield memory is to become the wound itself. Her chest heaved. She felt every ancestor's hand guiding hers, every battle ever lost, every victory ever stolen. And yet, Beneath it all, she felt the unbearable weight of a truth she had not chosen. The throne was not a throne at all. It was a prison. Around her, crew collapsed. Some curled into fetal positions, clutching their skulls. Others convulsed, screaming names that weren't theirs. Rourke slammed into the wall, blood leaking from his nose as he muttered entire star maps humanity had never charted. The throne was forcing them to carry the burden of species long erased. It wasn't just gifting knowledge. It was offloading it, pouring every extinguished memory into human minds. It had chosen them not as rulers, but as vessels. Elena's knees buckled. She gripped the glowing lattice until her skin blistered. "Why us?" she spat through clenched teeth. "Why humans?" The throne's answer came as an avalanche of thought. Because you were forgotten before you began. Because you were overlooked. Because when the council closed the circle, you were too small to notice. The forgotten must carry the forgotten. On Earth, chaos had become ritual. Across continents, people gathered in masses, drawn to fire and sound, chanting words that had not been spoken for ages. From Siberian plateaus to Amazon jungles, from city blocks to war memorials, entire populations moved in trance-like unison. The throne was weaving humanity into something new. Not one culture, not one people, but a living archive. But archives do not live without cracking. Hospitals overflowed with screaming patients who dreamed the deaths of alien emperors. Children clawed at walls, drawing constellations they had never seen. Soldiers shot at shadows that were centuries gone. Humanity was breaking under the very gift that made it untouchable. The council elders watched with cold detachment. "They will collapse under the weight," one sneered. Another, older still, shook its head. "No, they will become the weight." And that was the true terror. Back aboard the Odyssey, Elena stood taller, her skin charred with golden burns, her eyes no longer only her own. She was host to voices, countless and unyielding, but she held herself steady. Rourke dragged himself up beside her, his voice hoarse. "Captain, this thing, it'll kill us." Elena's lips curled into something that wasn't a smile, wasn't a snarl. "Then let it. But before it does, it will kill them first." She turned toward the bridge. The throne pulsed as if bowing. Humanity had not been given a choice, but they had been given a weapon. And now, they would use it. At that same moment, on the far edge of the galaxy, resistance fleets stirred. Entire species enslaved for millennia raised their eyes and remembered their true names. Ancient ships, buried in the dust of forgotten worlds, roared to life. The council felt the tremor in their bones. The universe was remembering itself, and humanity, the uninvited, had become the spark. The Odyssey sailed no longer as a ship, but as an extension of the throne. Its hull hummed like a cathedral bell, every panel etched with glowing veins of alien script. Where it passed, comets trembled and magnetic fields bent toward its wake. Humanity's first god was not a being. It was a vessel, and it carried the weight of every memory the universe had tried to bury. On the bridge, Captain Elena Mora stood as if carved from flame. The crew around her were half broken, half transcendent. Some whispered in dead tongues, others grinned with wild terror. Yet all stood, for they were held upright by more than human will. They were buoyed by the tide of civilizations that now flowed through their bones. Elena spoke, and her voice shook more than air. Set course for the council seat. Rourke, his eyes flickering with constellations like lanterns, croaked, "That's suicide." "No," Elena replied, her words echoing as if 1,000 captains stood behind her. "It's judgment." The council chamber sat on a world older than Earth's continents. A hollowed-out star cradled their spires, endless towers spiraling upward like frozen lightning. Here the elder species had convened for uncounted ages, their circle closed against intruders, their verdicts absolute. And into this sanctum the Odyssey arrived, a trespasser wrapped in golden fire. Alarms wailed across the star shell. Defense fleets rose, shimmering like swarms of silver wasps. Thousands of ships locked weapons on the human vessel. Elena didn't flinch. She opened her hand, and the throne answered. The Odyssey pulsed once, and the universe remembered. Every alien warrior in every ship screamed. Their ancestors clawed their way up from the grave of memory, dragging guilt, rage, and betrayal with them. Ships broke formation as pilots convulsed in terror, seeing with the eyes of enslaved forebears. No missile fired, no cannon roared. The fleets tore themselves apart, crushed not by steel, but by the unbearable truth of their own history. The Council's defenses had not fallen. They had unraveled. Inside the chamber, the elders felt it too. The Drakh bent their armored heads, recalling when they themselves had been conquered. The luminous Sarathi wept rivers of molten light as memories of betrayal seared through them. And then the doors opened. Elena Mora walked into the sanctum, boots striking thunder against the polished obsidian floor. She was not alone. Behind her marched the living tide of human crew, their eyes glowing with borrowed suns, their steps echoing like drums of war. The elders recoiled. "You cannot!" one stammered, voice cracking with disbelief. "You are not!" Another hissed, trembling. Elena raised her hand. "We are now!" The throne's voice poured through her. The forgotten take their seat. And as she lowered her hand, a ring of golden fire spread across the chamber, burning itself into the very architecture of the council. The circle was no longer closed. Humanity had carved itself a throne with memory and pain. From that moment, the council was never the same. Every decree they made carried human eyes upon it. Every lie they spoke was pierced by human memory. But the cost was already growing. Elena staggered as the weight inside her deepened. She could feel her mind fraying at the seams, her soul stretched across centuries of agony not her own. Rourke caught her before she collapsed. His whisper was more prayer than comfort. "How long can we bear it?" Elena's burned lips cracked into a grim smile. "As long as we must, because gods don't get to rest." And so humanity took their seat, not as diplomats, not as beggars, not as guests, but as gods of memory, the one throne the galaxy could never again deny. The chamber of the throne no longer felt like a discovery. It felt like a sentence. Captain Elena Mora sat at the heart of the lattice, her hands hovering inches above the golden geometry that spun endlessly beneath her. Every time her skin brushed the glow, visions surged, not of the past hours or years or centuries, but of eons stacked like stones in a canyon. Civilizations born in fire, climbing to heights unimagined, then falling into silence. Voices screamed across the dark, promising eternity, yet each one was snuffed out in the same way, pride collapsing under its own weight. And now, humanity's turn. The crew of the Odyssey had not left the chamber since claiming it. They slept in the corners like pilgrims afraid to leave a temple. Some had begun to whisper prayers, though no one could say to whom. Elena's voice was hoarse when she finally spoke. "The throne is not a seat," she said, not looking at her crew. "It's a burden. It remembers everything. And it makes you remember too." Lieutenant Harrow, who had once laughed at the council's pomp, now looked hollow. His hands shook as he gestured at the living walls. "Captain, I see their deaths. Every time I blink, I see worlds burning. Not ours, theirs, the ones who tried before us." Others nodded in fear. Outside, the galaxy reeled. The Odyssey's transmission of humanity seated on the throne had rippled through every channel, every relay, every hyperwave. Billions had watched Elena Mora rise into a place no human should ever have stood. The council chamber still buzzed with the echoes of it, some calling it a crime, others swearing it was prophecy fulfilled. But not everyone watched in awe. Some elder species gathered in secret. The throne had been forbidden for a reason, and now it pulsed in human hands. The galaxy could not allow it to stand. Inside the artifact, Elena clutched her temples as another wave of visions burned through her skull. This time it was not death she saw, but use. The throne was no mere archive. It was a weapon older than stars. She could feel the controls buried in its song, feel the way entire constellations could be shifted like chess pieces. And with that knowledge came terror. The crew of the Odyssey had followed her to the edge of the unknown. Now they stood trembling, wondering if their captain had brought them to salvation or to damnation. The throne whispered in her mind. It did not beg, it did not persuade, it simply showed. She saw fleets bowing, she saw civilizations kneeling, she saw humanity at last, not on the outside of the god's circle, but at its blazing heart. Her lips trembled. "Maybe that's why we were never invited," she whispered. "Because if we sat here, we would never give it back." Outside, in the silence between stars, the first enemy fleets began to move. The warning came not as sound, nor as light, but as vibration, the kind of shiver that ran through the bones of the Odyssey before any sensor could scream. Harrow stumbled to the railing. "Captain, something's coming! No, someone's coming!" In the lattice above Elena's head, the golden geometry shifted, reconfiguring like a nervous system preparing for battle. She didn't need Harrow's report. She felt them. A fleet. Vast, hungry, terrified. The elder races had made their choice. Ships materialized from the void, tearing rifts open in the dark. They were not scouts. They were not envoys. They were executioners. Hundreds of vessels bearing the banners of species older than Earth's oceans, all converging on one point. The artifact, the throne. "They're here to erase us," whispered Dr. Kyung, the ship's scientist. "They don't fear humanity. They fear what we've sat on." The walls of the chamber pulsed brighter, as though mocking the assault. Elena rose to her feet, every step heavy with the weight of galaxies. She placed her palm against the living gold. The throne did not resist. It welcomed her touch, and suddenly, she saw everything. The incoming fleets were not distant shadows. She saw each ship as if she stood upon its bridge, insectoid pilots trembling behind crystalline controls, aquatic commanders thrumming war songs through liquid chambers, avian captains squawking in fear as they convinced themselves that slaughter was justice. They did not see humanity as equals. They saw them as contagion, and contagion had to be burned out before it spread. "Captain," Harrow pressed, his voice desperate. "Orders? Do we fight? Do we run?" Her throat went dry. She could feel the throne offering her options. To her right, golden threads painted visions of annihilation, enemy fleets crumbling like sandcastles beneath waves of impossible energy. To her left, another vision, the Odyssey fleeing into the abyss, abandoning the throne but preserving her crew. The throne had no morality. It did not advise. It only showed. But Elena Mora was human. She tightened her grip. "We don't run," she said softly. The walls answered with thunder. Outside, in the black ocean of space, light bloomed. Not human weapons. Not even alien weapons. Something older, deeper. From the artifact itself, arcs of starfire lanced outward, carving the void with precision no living commander could have achieved. The first wave of attackers disintegrated in silence, their hulls unmade, their crews turned to ash before a scream could leave their throats. The rest of the fleet faltered. Inside their bridges, panic spread. They had come expecting to cull primitives playing with fire. Instead, they faced the fire itself, wielded by hands steady and mortal. Elena stood taller, though her chest burned with the weight of what she had unleashed. The throne whispered again, not in words, but in possibilities. She could finish this. She could break them all in one strike, and the galaxy would never again question whether humanity belonged at the table. Her crew watched her in silence. Not one of them dared to interrupt. And above it all, Elena Mora whispered words that would be remembered long after fleets had turned to dust. "Tell the galaxy, we are not asking for a seat, we are taking it." The throne roared. The void burned. Fragments of ships drifted like charred leaves on a dark river, glowing embers where once the elder fleets had glided with centuries of arrogance. The Odyssey's crew stood transfixed, every breath shallow, as if inhaling too deeply might break the fragile silence that followed annihilation. But Elena Mora heard no silence. The throne whispered. It always whispered. Each pulse of golden geometry etched new pathways into her mind. It showed her the fleets regrouping, rallying on the edges of the system. It showed her councils screaming in fear as their ancient dominion cracked. And it showed her humanity. Millions of tiny lights spread across the stars, vulnerable, unaware, waiting for the hammer to fall. "Captain," Dr. Kyung's voice trembled, "you are controlling it, aren't you?" Elena did not answer immediately. Her hands hovered over the living lattice, fingers twitching as though she were conducting a symphony only she could hear. For every option the throne presented, another bloomed. Possibilities multiplied until her mind swam. She felt infinite paths spiraling outward, threads of history unraveling before her eyes. "I don't know if it's me controlling it," she admitted finally, "or if it's controlling me." Harrow stepped closer, jaw clenched. "What matters is that they're coming back, and in greater numbers. Captain, if this throne can end them, and all of them, you should." The suggestion hung heavy in the chamber. The crew shifted uncomfortably, but none spoke against him. Because they were human, and they remembered. They remembered history filled with wars that began with hesitation, with underestimation, with mercy shown to those who came to kill. The throne pulsed brighter, as though it approved. Elena felt her heart hammering. She thought of Earth, of her mother's kitchen in Madrid, of laughter over simple meals. She thought of the July skies when fireworks painted colors across the dark, humanity's own imitation of cosmic fire. She thought of what would be lost if she faltered. She clenched her teeth. No, not like this. But the fleets arrived again, thousands this time. They darkened the system like locusts, blotting out distant starlight. Ancient war machines, titans of alien engineering, converged with one singular intent: to smother humanity before it could rise. The crew braced for death. Elena closed her eyes and opened herself fully to the throne. It did not resist. It embraced. Her veins ignited. Her skin hummed. Every nerve was threaded into the artifact until she no longer stood in a chamber of gold, but in a vast cosmos of living light. She was the throne. She was the weapon older than stars. And she spoke in fire. The system's sun flared unnaturally, ejecting tendrils of energy that lashed at the attackers. Space bent, folding in on itself, trapping ships in loops of infinite pursuit until they tore themselves apart. Weapons melted in alien hands as entropy devoured their alloys. The fleets that had endured millennia, that had cowed empires into silence, now screamed across a canvas painted by human hands. But as the slaughter unfolded, Elena trembled. For each enemy life extinguished, she felt it, a tug. The throne was not a tool of peace. It was hunger. It enjoyed this. And deep in her bones, she realized the truth. The throne had not chosen her to protect humanity. It had chosen humanity because humanity would use it, because no other race had the fury, the defiance, the will to take the seat no one offered. The whispers swelled, a chorus of temptation. Strike them all. Burn their worlds. Make humanity eternal. Elena gasped, staggering, her grip loosening from the lattice. "No," she whispered, trembling. "Not like this." But already her crew stared at her differently, not as their captain, not even as their friend, as something more, something terrifying, something that might already be too far gone. The fleets broke. For the first time in their long dominion, the elder races faltered. The arrogance that had defined them across countless millennia fractured into terror. They fled, not in organized retreat but in chaos, desperate to escape the firestorm the throne had unleashed under human hands. But not all escaped. The wreckage of ships drifted like tombstones across the void, glowing faintly where hulls still burned. Transmission channels burst alive with desperate voices, pleas for ceasefire, offers of surrender, and beneath it all, venomous vows that humanity would be destroyed no matter how long it took. Elena Mora heard it all, every voice, every whisper, not through comms, but through the throne itself, which pulled their words into her skull and wrapped them around her heart like chains. She could feel the hatred pointed toward her species, hot and sharp as a knife. And yet, beneath that hatred, there was something else: fear. The Odyssey's bridge was silent. The crew gathered in awe and horror as Elena disconnected herself from the lattice. For the first time in hours, her body was her own again. Her knees buckled. Kyung caught her before she fell. "You should rest." "No." Her voice was raw but steady. "We don't have time. They'll regroup. And if they don't—" She drew a shaking breath. "The council will call an inquest." The word sent a chill through the crew. The Galactic Council, that silent conclave of elder races who had always spoken of humanity as an infant species, too young for the stars, too reckless for responsibility. They had barred Earth from entry, shut them out of galactic law, dismissed their envoys. But now humanity had touched something older than the council itself. Elena saw it clearly. Not through the throne this time, but with her own mind. The council would never allow humanity to keep this weapon. They would not allow Earth to sit at their table as equals. They would demand surrender. They would strip the throne away, bury it deeper than before, and punish humanity for daring to rise, unless humanity claimed its place, not by invitation, not by permission, but by fire. Elena straightened, brushing Kyung's hand away. She stood at the heart of the bridge, still trembling, her skin faintly luminous with residual power. "Set course for Aurelian Prime." Gasps filled the air. Aurelian Prime was not a star system. It was the star system, the seat of the council, a place no human ship had ever been allowed to approach. "Captain, that's suicide," Harrow growled. "Their fleets are endless." "Not anymore," Elena whispered. "Not when the throne has already torn their endlessness to pieces." The crew looked at her with a mix of dread and devotion, because she was not wrong. Humanity had already crossed the line. There would be no forgiveness, no return to anonymity among the stars. If they faltered now, Earth would burn. But if they pressed forward, if they struck at the heart of the council itself, they could force the galaxy to kneel. Kyung's voice broke the silence. "If we do this, if we march into their chamber with the throne at our back," she swallowed. "We won't just be demanding a seat, Captain, we'll be taking it, forever." Elena's eyes hardened. "Then let them remember us, not as children, not as supplicants, as gods among them." The throne pulsed in agreement, golden light spreading through the walls of the ship as if it had heard every word. And far ahead, beyond the veil of stars, Aurelian Prime waited. The place where humanity's fate would be written. The place where the gods of the galaxy would finally meet the species they had never invited, only to learn that the seat had already been taken. Aurelian Prime hung in the void like a jewel cut from eternity. Its oceans shimmered in turquoise bands. Its continents glowed with latticeworks of golden light, and above it drifted rings of colossal stations, each one older than human civilization, each one bristling with the pride of species who had ruled for so long they no longer remembered what it was to fear. No human vessel had ever come this close. But today, the Odyssey did not come alone. Behind her sailed the remnants of Earth's hastily forged fleet. Frigates and carriers scarred from the battles around the throne, cruisers whose hulls still bled atmosphere, civilian ships refitted with weapons bolted on by desperate engineers. A fleet not of elegance, but of defiance. And at its center, the throne's golden pulse radiated through the Odyssey's frame, turning the human flagship into something that looked less like a ship and more like a harbinger. The Council noticed. The instant humanity's armada crossed the interdiction line, the void bloomed with shadows. 1,000 ships blinked into existence, sleek and perfect, their formations flawless, their hulls shining with the authority of races who believed themselves eternal. The channel burst alive. Unregistered vessels! You violate the sanctity of the Council's sphere. Cut engines and prepare for seizure, or you will be destroyed. The voice was calm, dismissive. It carried no fear, because in all their long history, the Council had never been challenged in their own skies. Elena Mora stood at the front of the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back. She had expected this. She welcomed it. "Open broadcast," she ordered. Kyung hesitated, then nodded. The comm array pulsed. Across the void, across the networks of the Council, across every relay tuned to the homeworld of the ancients, humanity's face appeared. Captain Mora's voice rang out. "This is Elena Mora of Earth. You told us we were too young, too reckless, too dangerous to sit among you. You barred our envoys. You mocked our resolve. And now..." She gestured to the glow pulsing through the Odyssey's hull. "Now we stand at your gates, with the fire you buried and forgot. And we do not ask for your permission. We do not beg for your mercy. We take our seat." Silence answered. Then a ripple of laughter, cold, ancient, dripping with contempt. The speaker was not a single voice, but a chorus, the Council itself. "Child of Earth, do you truly think a stolen relic makes you our equal? You know nothing of what you wield. That throne is older than your son. It will unmake you as it has unmade countless others who dared to rise too quickly. Step down, surrender it, and we may let your world live." Elena smiled. But it was not a smile of mirth. It was the smile of someone who had walked too far into darkness to ever turn back. "You still don't understand," she said softly. "It didn't choose you. It chose us." The throne answered her words with a low hum, its golden lattice blazing through the Odyssey's spine. The light spread outward, flowing across the fleet behind her, binding ship to ship in threads of power no human engineer had built. The battered armada straightened, its formations snapping together with impossible precision, as though the throne itself was weaving humanity into a single weapon. The laughter died. For the first time in untold ages, the Council felt something alien to them, not scorn, not superiority, something colder. Doubt. Around Aurelian Prime, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. And then the Council gave their answer. "Very well, child of Earth," the chorus intoned. "You wished for war among gods. You will have it." The fleets shifted, weapons igniting like suns. And for the first time in history, humanity stood face to face with the gods of the galaxy, ready to claim the throne they had never been invited to. The void above Aurelian Prime cracked open with fire. The Council's vanguard moved as one. Thousands of warships, every formation drilled over millennia, their hulls gleaming with weapons whose origins were written in the dawn of stars. They surged forward like a tide meant to sweep away all defiance. By contrast, humanity's fleet looked broken before the battle even began. Half their ships bore scars from the throne's awakening. A third of them had weapons older than their captains. A quarter had never been designed for war at all. Yet when the Council's storm fell upon them, something strange happened. The throne answered. On the Odyssey's bridge, Elena felt it ripple through her chest, an unseen rhythm linking heartbeats, linking thoughts. Around her, the tactical boards lit with paths no human mind had charted. The throne was showing them, guiding them, weaving their fractured fleet into something more. "Vanguard incoming!" Kyung shouted. "Formations Alpha through Epsilon!" "They're already moving," Elena whispered. And indeed, the ships obeyed not her command, but something deeper. Civilian freighters shifted into flanking arcs. Frigates rotated shields with mathematical perfection. Carriers launched fighters into patterns that had never been taught, yet felt inevitable. The first volley came screaming in. Council energy beams wide enough to split continents, missiles laced with gravity shear. Humanity should have been torn apart. Instead, the beams bent. The Odyssey's golden lattice pulsed, and space itself rippled. Attacks that should have vaporized entire wings slid past, refracted, dissipated into nothing. Human ships darted through the chaos like wolves among a herd. And then, Earth struck back. Railguns that had once been clumsy artillery now fired in unison, their slugs threading weak points the throne revealed. Plasma batteries found chinks in armor thought invincible. Tiny, outdated human fighters dove headlong into gaps that shouldn't have existed, but now lay open like doors. The first council ships died screaming into the void. On the bridge of the Odyssey, Ensign Velez gasped, eyes wide. We're killing them!" No one had ever said that sentence before, not in all the centuries of the Council's dominion. But reality didn't care about precedent. Hulls cracked, engines flared, gods bled. The chorus of the Council rang across every channel, sharp and disbelieving. Impossible! Impossible! Yet even in their fury, they adapted. Dozens of their fleets folded into new formations, collapsing around the human armada. For every Council vessel destroyed, 10 more took its place. Their weapons roared, their shields flared, and little by little the tide pressed inward. Humanity fought like a cornered animal, teeth bared and claws raking, but the numbers, the weight, the age-old mastery of the Council pressed closer with every passing second. On the Odyssey, alarms howled. A corvette in the left flank burst apart, taking 2 fighters with it. A freighter-turned gunship cracked down the middle, its crew still screaming in open comms before the void silenced them. The throne blazed brighter, but even its power strained. Threads of gold snapped under the onslaught. Elena gripped the rail, refusing to look away. She knew the truth. They had surprised the Council. They had wounded them. But this was only the beginning. If they faltered here, humanity would be erased before Aurelian Prime even saw them. "Captain!" Kyung shouted. "We can't hold this line!" "No," Elena said. Her eyes burned, but her voice was steady. "We don't hold it. We break it." She pressed her palm against the throne's console. The hum of the ancient lattice surged through her veins, filling her chest, her skull, her very bones with light. And then she spoke, not to her crew, but to the throne itself. "Show us how gods fall," and the throne answered. The Odyssey's hull ignited, light bursting outward like a newborn sun. Every human ship flared gold in response, shields hardening, weapons aligning in ways they had never been meant to. The formation inverted, human vessels collapsing into a spearhead aimed at the Council's heart. The second clash began, not as prey against hunters but as equals, standing among gods. The battle over Aurelian Prime had not ended so much as it had transformed. What began as ships exchanging fire and fleets colliding had shifted into something greater, something older. The throne was awake, and through it, so was humanity. The golden lattice within the artifact spread across the void like a second constellation, visible to every sensor, every eye, every trembling observer. The Council's ships fired their beam lances, their quantum spears, their world-shattering cannons, but the attacks bent, fizzled, or dissolved before reaching Earth's fleet. It was not defense in the way other races understood it. It was as though the universe itself had decided not here, not them. Captain Elena Mora stood on the bridge of the Odyssey, her crew transfixed by the impossible calm in the storm of war. The artifact had not only answered their touch, it had become part of them. Her voice carried, though it was quiet. We aren't just passengers anymore. We are writing into the laws themselves. Around them, the council fleets reeled. Worlds that had lorded their superiority for eons, races who had engineered suns, who had harnessed black holes as toys, watched their combined armadas falter against a species that had only just walked among the stars. Panic radiated across their comms. For the first time in living memory, the elder races knew fear. But the throne did not only project power, it demanded choice. The lattice pulsed, and in Elena's mind, echoed in every human linked through the throne, a question resounded. Will you dominate, or will you rise? They could crush the council utterly. Humanity now held the fulcrum to unmake fleets, to burn entire worlds into ash with thought alone. For a fleeting heartbeat, the temptation surged. Vengeance for centuries of exclusion, for being dismissed as primitives, for being treated as a curiosity rather than a peer. Elena felt it. Her crew felt it. Billions of human minds linked across the lattice felt it. But then, like a single voice singing back to the chorus, humanity chose. They did not come to kneel. They did not come to annihilate. They came to take their seat. The throne's glow shifted. Where moments before it burned like a weapon, now it spread warmth, a steady radiance that reached out to the panicked fleets. Weapons fell silent, engines cut. The void grew still. Humanity did not crush the council. They stilled it with a single act of refusal. Then Elena spoke into the quiet, her voice amplified not by machinery, but by the throne itself. You never invited us. You never believed we were ready. You sat here for ages guarding secrets you didn't deserve, but the truth is simple. We are here, and the galaxy will never again decide without us. The throne shuddered, then seated itself. The great lattice folded back into place, this time with a new center point, Earth. Every council member felt it in their marrow. Humanity was no longer beyond the gates. They were the gates, the keystone in the ancient order. On Aurelian Prime, the Council of Elders fell into chaos. The ancient voices argued, wailed, resisted. Some screamed that the humans had stolen what was forbidden. Others, trembling, whispered what they already knew. The artifact had not been stolen. It had chosen. And once chosen, its decision could not be undone. The war ended without surrender, without treaty. It ended because reality itself shifted. Humanity had claimed what no other dared. Back aboard the Odyssey, Elena finally let her shoulders drop. Her crew stared out into the reshaped void with wide, awed eyes. One whispered, "We didn't just join the council. We rewrote it." Elena nodded, though her expression carried the weight of what was to come. We have our seat now, but holding it will cost more than any battle ever could. And so humanity entered the age of the gods. Not as servants, not as exiles, not as weapons, but as equals who had demanded a chair at the table and taken it with fire and will. For the first time in eons, the council was not eternal. For the first time in eons, the galaxy had changed, and it would never change back.